Do you want to learn how to get healthy, perform at your best, and create body composition changes that last? In this podcast, we're going to talk about all things fitness, nutrition, health, and mindset. You're going to learn how to create real results, and most importantly, how to maintain those results in the long run. I'm Johan Vesters.
I'm Kristine and Johan.
And you're listening to Talking Nutrition. Well, there we go. That's the intro for the week.
Oh my god.
All right. What's up, guys? A bonus episode today. We've been getting a lot of questions, and the questions are piling up. So we figured let's squeeze in a bonus episode. So this week we actually have two. So this will be launching on a what do you want to do? Wednesday or Thursday? Let's do Thursday. Sounds good?
Oh, so we're gonna launch two in a week? I like that.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Just to try it out, you know?
Yeah, why not?
Let's do Thursday, because then there's like a good amount of time in between.
Yeah.
Okay. No idea what date that is, but we'll figure it out. We'll also try to keep it to the point here. Hey, so we have a lot of questions. As always, thank you so much for submitting this stuff. We got a lot of good stuff. We actually want to basically dive right into it. If you could do us a huge favor, please drop us a 5-star rating or review. I always have a hard time saying that. I should try to not rush it so much. But drop us a review. We would highly, highly appreciate that. And let's just jump in with the first question, Kristine.
Yeah, so I had someone ask about the step counter, and I've posted it a few times on my Instagram, but I feel like people don't see all my content.
The old school ones.
Yeah. So we've talked about it before, but I used to use my Garmin watch, which I really liked. I mean, I used it for a long, long time, and I still use it sometimes, but now it's more so just for style, because I was really only using it for steps and a watch. But I kind of wanted to get away from electronics. Just have days where like I had nothing, no electronics on me. So I got this pedometer, and you just clip it onto your pants. And I started using it. I'm like, okay, this is like way more accurate. Right. Yeah. And I just started using this. So it's the 3D Fit Bud, and I love it. People are like, well, one client, she started using it and she's like, I keep forgetting to put it on. I'm like, okay, put it in the bathroom. So what I do is every night before I go to bed, I put it on the bathroom counter. And then when I go in there in the morning, I take it and I put it on my pants. It's like making it very obvious. So that's like a way so you don't forget, because it's easy to forget, honestly. Yeah. Anyway, we're going to put the link in the bio. No, the link in the show notes.
Show notes. That's what I have to think about it too.
I'm so used to saying bio. And I really like it. And, I just like it from the standpoint of being able to to unplug from like everything. But I use it on a daily basis now. So, yes.
They're good. It's just like, it's easy. And honestly, like I used to also forget in the very beginning, but it's just something that you used to. And now I use it all the time. And I do prefer it as well. It's actually, I haven't been using my Whoop in a long time, now that I think of it. Basically for a similar reason. I was like, well, it does add up cost-wise. Like, I was thinking like, how much do I actually use it? Because I aim to go to go to bed at the same time anyway, wake up at the same time. Well, if that's all, like if I'm just tracking sleep, then I'll just focus on consistency and just leave the tracker out,
Yep.
So, we'll link that down below in the show notes. Next question from Anders, who's from Tromsø here. He said, how do you stick to your diet when you start feeling unmotivated and just want to quit? Now, first of all, actually, time of this recording, I put a post up yesterday called Motivation is Bullshit, or Why Motivation is Bullshit. I like motivation in a way that it can help you get a little bit of an extra boost, right? Like it's good to have motivation, let's be honest. Reality is motivation is not going to lead to results. Thing is too, we think we need motivation to get started, but that's not the case. Like you got to get started, you got to create momentum, and then motivation will show up. When you need it the most, when you are, when you really want to lose weight, for example, or you really want to change something, when things are not going to go, or when things are not going as planned, when things are more difficult, that's when motivation is not there. That's when you wish you had motivation. So to snap out of that, you just got to start, do something. And that sounds like it's much easier said than done, but whatever the goal is, get going, start creating momentum, So how do you stick to your diet? Well, first of all, let's just one step at a time, like focus on creating something that you can stick to, right? And it doesn't have to be like a diet where it's like very strict, like, hey, let's maybe focus on veggies and fruits and dial in those basics. Are we hitting protein with every meal? Maybe tracking could be a great tool. And I think we actually have a question coming up later about tracking too. But the reality is, like, we are going to feel unmotivated and we are going to feel like we just want to quit. I'm biased, but I think getting a coach is one of the best things you can do. And it's just because you are invested in yourself. And if you have some skin in the game, like, of course, you're going to pay attention, hopefully at least. We are also here to hold you accountable, and other coaches as well. It's not just to like sell shit here, But reality is, like, there are going to be moments where we just don't feel like it. So it's all about preparing for those moments. It's all about creating the habits that we need to stay consistent. And then when motivation is there, great. It's a little bonus, but we just can't rely on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I'll add to that. So personally, I am going through this with training, like working out, it's such a weird thing because I was a professional athlete at one point. Like it was like my whole life, right? But what I do, and I think can be really helpful to a lot of people, is we talked a lot about this in the course we did was intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Yeah, really good.
And one part of that I really like is basically, so like eating healthy, like what are your values, right? Like you want to have more energy, you want to maybe it's lose weight to be more active with your children, different things like that, like life values. What do you value? And coupling that with what did I mention? I wrote a post on this recently. Basically, when you're not motivated, you connect that activity or diet or whatever it is to your values. Okay. So when I don't feel like working out, what do? I think I'm thinking about my values. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to choose to work out today because I want to, lower the risk of disease later on in my life. Right. So something like that, like I'm always connecting that activity or that behavior to something that's really important to me. And that way it becomes intrinsic and you're way more likely to do that thing versus it being like, I just want to lose weight for this wedding or, something that's kind of superficial. So yeah, sometimes I'm like, I really don't want to work out today. But I'm going to because it aligns with my values, and that can help a lot.
Yeah, I think it's also very common to struggle with feeling unmotivated.
100%.
And that's exactly where the goal setting comes in, and just knowing exactly why you're doing something,
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, next question.
I think my biggest, okay, oh, sorry, this is from Molly Moran. So she's asking, I think my biggest struggle and what I try to learn more about is hormones / menstruation cycles and training. At 38, I'm perimenopausal and my energy tanks during my luteal phase. What are ways to combat that energy loss? Do you up your calories during that time? Focus on more iron-rich foods? Any certain supplements to help? So I touched on this a little bit couple episodes ago. That luteal phase, it's fairly normal to see energy decrease a little bit. But if it's like impacting you significantly, I mean, that's something definitely to look more into. I will up my calories or up clients' calories if they are, more hungry or they feel like they need it, right? It's very normal to have that increase in hunger around that time because of progesterone, because our metabolic rate actually increases around that time. In terms of energy, if you are seeing a significant decrease there, I would be looking at, potentially pulling back on training a little bit. I used to do this. I still do it, like just based on how I feel. Because you want to manage how much stress is on the body at that time because it's already a stressful time, right? So like if you're lower in energy and you're just like pushing through training, it's making you feel worse, that's a problem, right? So sometimes I will pull back on training, whether it's taking an extra rest day or like lowering volume and lowering intensity or like doing lower impact workouts for that, 1 to 2 weeks. And that way you typically will feel better once it's over, right? Your body's going to be under less stress that way. In terms of like more iron rich foods, yeah, I mean, that can definitely help, but I'm always just focusing on, getting in the micronutrients, right? And just having that, be a focus, the veggies, the fruits, protein, hydration, lifestyle stuff, like making sure, you're prioritizing sleep, right? That's all going to play into that. Another thing with our menstrual cycle that we have to take into consideration is what did our past 2 months look like, 1 to 2 months, because that can significantly impact our PMS symptoms. So if we have a really stressful month, we can see that showing up in our PMS symptoms. They can essentially get worse. So obviously stress management, becomes really important. Any certain supplements to help? I'm a big fan of magnesium glycinate. I have that specific magnesium glycinate that I always rant and rave about. It's so good. It's from Look Organics. It's magnesium glycinate plus L-theanine. Again, another one is omega-3s. And another one I really like is a B complex, which can help the energy around your cycle. So these are all ones that I really like around the cycle. Big one is that magnesium. I usually up the dose around it as well. In terms of if this continues to if it's significantly impacting you, in a very negative way, there is some normalcy to this, right? Energy and things like that decreasing. But if it's really impacting the quality of your life, I would be getting some testing done. You are perimenopausal, so there are changes happening there. So I would get some testing done and see, what is going on under the hood. And then that way, you can obviously you would have to be working with someone, whether it's a naturopathic doctor or a nutrition coach who really knows what they're doing. Because what I do is I will get this testing done. And then I will implement specific things based off the testing, but symptoms too. We have to treat the client or the patient and not just the labs. That's really important, but it can give us a good understanding or baseline of what is going on. And if we can add in certain supplements or things like that, that can help aid, what you're doing right now. But the lifestyle factors, the diet, the micronutrients, sleep, all of that is going to play into PMS symptoms. So it's going to be different. It kind of depends on the person. It's hard to say exactly or give you like definitive answers of like what to do.
It's very personal.
Yeah, but those are like my general recommendations.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think I don't have anything to add there. Next one. From let me see, dblades_fit. I like this question. I have a client who's eating in a deficit, but still gaining weight. How do I ensure they continue to lose weight? They are not in a deficit. That's just the reality. Like I'm not even being like funny here in a way, but they're not in deficit. They are not gaining weight in a calorie deficit. As always, it depends, and I would need a lot more context here. But typically, there's a couple of things that happen, And there was actually, let me start with one, because this is very common, and I'm not telling people that they're lying, but there's actually research on this. People massively underreport when they track. Yes. Massively. I'm not kidding. Like, I always tell people, like, when people are like either like, stagnating or maybe even like gaining when they're supposed to be, big words, supposed to be in a deficit, that's almost like one of the first things I bring up. Like, I'm like, hey, I got to be completely honest with you. I'm not saying that you're lying to me, but there's a good chance that there are more calories coming in than we see on paper. Within that, there's two scenarios. That could be on purpose, could be not on purpose. Hey, some people just have to learn how to accurately track, how to measure. Some people just forget. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's, hey, let's be honest, like, people are busy, On the other hand, there's also the purposeful, like, not logging of stuff that could come from, I mean, we talked about this with Adney, almost like a cheating the system, approach where it's like, I just, let me just not report it, which actually wasn't the case, with him, but it's still kind of cheating the system. It could also come from a thing where people almost feel bad for letting their coach down. They want to prove the coach, like, hey, I'm doing well, I want to hit my numbers. Yeah, so that's one. On the other hand, people do adapt to a deficit. However, they would still not be gaining. So I shouldn't mix up the question here. If they would be just kind of like staying the same weight, like, that's normal. Over time, that just happens. And if they are consistent with tracking, they're accurate with tracking, they saw weight loss and then stopped, that's like 100% normal. We would just have to adjust within context. We're not going to keep lowering calories, over and over. But that basically is how it works. Now, if it's been a while, it's time to just go back to maintenance and focus on that, upregulating metabolism, possibly building some muscle, giving yourself that break to recover, to then maybe go into a cut maybe a couple of months after. That's another thing people don't want to hear, right? People don't want to be in maintenance for 3 months before continuing their cut. However, that is what's necessary. So yeah, long story short, like, I don't necessarily know what's the case here, but people never gain weight in a calorie deficit. People could stay the same weight in a calorie deficit if there's some bloating or water retention, stress, whatever. And if anything, usually you just see slow down. But gaining, there's more calories coming in than we know, basically.
Yeah, and it's a hard situation, honestly.
Yeah.
Because you have to have kind of a
relationship
conversation in a way. Like, if I suspect that a client isn't being honest, like, I really want, like, first and foremost, it's really important right off the bat that you create a safe environment. Like, when I am onboarding somebody, and I'm sending them their video, or like we're on the phone, I'm very upfront in saying, you have to understand that there's no judgment here. I need to know everything. If you if you overeat one day or anything like that, that's really, really important for me to know, so that we can, make the adjustments that we need to, or like talk through it, and like, so that you can get over stuff like this. Right. So I make it very known right from the beginning that there's literally no judgment. So
But you need to communicate that as the coach. Like, you got to tell them,
yes.
like, yo,
yeah. So
be open with me.
You have to take Andy, for example, right? So like, this is a prime example of that, where he was in a deficit with the old coach, but he was cheating the system where he was like binging, and then he wasn't losing any weight. He potentially could have been gaining weight. And like, it's because he didn't feel safe to tell that coach what was really going on. Yeah. Right. So I'll start by like, sometimes I'll ask a client, like, on a scale from like 1 to 10, how would you rate your adherence? Like, how have you been having any like extra licks, extra bites, kind of type thing? And just start that conversation with them and make them feel comfortable, right? Because when they feel comfortable, they're obviously way more likely to respond to that. So yeah, I think in a situation like this, if they're in a deficit and gaining weight, there's more calories coming in somewhere, unless they've like become really sedentary, right? And like,
that's a good one. Yeah,
just stop moving. They've become really sedentary, and they're not moving, or they're not working out, and their energy expenditure has decreased significantly, and they're eating more calories. That's the other thing I can think of, but that's what I have there.
Yeah. But hey, like, look into it. Like, that's your job as the coach. Like, try to figure it out with them. Yeah. Communicate. Just make sure that they know that it's okay to come to you completely honest, and then try to figure it out together. Because hey, it might as well just be something tiny that they just didn't realize, and it's like a super easy fix.
Yeah, and I would be too, like, another thing here too is like the deficit, and like, how big is it, and is it like sustainable for the time being for them? Where their mindset is with food, because like, if it's too strict for them and they're binging, right? Like, that's probably where it's coming from. So like, looking at, how steep is the deficit, and is it doable for that person, based off of their past, right? Did they have issues, with this before? Like, there's so many things to look into and to ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next one.
Where are we at here? What's time? So 23.
The binge eating one.
Okay, so what are some strategies to help with binge eating and to help get out of the dieting mindset? I almost didn't answer this question, because binge eating is a complex thing that can be different based on the person, and what's causing it, what's triggering it. It could be a multitude of like different things triggering it. 'Cause like, for example, someone could have binging issue, and it's the diet. Okay. So like, their diet is just super unsustainable, right? And they're spinning their wheels because they can't stick to the diet. So it's like strict binge, strict binge, strict binge. So like, taking a more sustainable approach can solve that, quite literally solve that problem. Like, I've had clients come to me that are like, again, Andy's kind of one of them, right? The keto thing, where we took him out of keto, and there was other things affecting the binging too, but that was like a major one, right? So, working towards that transition and just making it a more sustainable diet, getting help that way too. Again, coach can help a lot. Then there's binge eating where someone's like coping with something. That does tend to get out of our scope a little bit.
Yeah.
Where like a therapist can help there as well. If there's like past trauma, and things like that. And it's, kind of filling a void. Then sometimes it's like, it's habit based. That's another one that people don't often think about, where like, for example, I had a client who was like in the habit of when she was alone, she would binge, or like at night sitting in front of the TV, like something like that would create a binge, or like when she was bored, it would create a binge. So like getting out of a habit.
Yeah, people around you, environment, like there's so many factors, like it's hard to say.
So like becoming aware of why this is happening is crucial. The awareness, right, of what is causing this, because each are going to have a different process and different solution based on that, right?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on helping to get out of the dieting mindset?
Now, I just wanted to quickly add, because you mentioned something very important, and it is sometimes it goes beyond our scope. And this is to our fellow coaches. If at some point, like we know, hey, okay, this is someone who's actually struggling with like more than what we are supposed to help people with, when it's like actual, like it's an eating disorder, refer out. That's totally okay. That's better for you. It's better for them, especially for them. Like that's what's most important. But I feel like especially in the beginning, people might feel like, oh, I'm going to help everyone. No, you're not going to. And that's okay. Sometimes we have to say, hey, you know what? Actually, in this case, I might not be able to. And then other times it might just be something small. We did that low carb and intermittent fasting episode. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes we just need a different approach. But the dieting mindset and how to get out of it, again, like with a coach, would be my suggestion. And that's not because I am a coach, but that's simply because it's difficult. Trust me, like taking people into a deficit, that's the easy stuff. That's why most people lose weight. The reason why most people don't manage to keep it off is that they stay in the dieting mindset. They are not shown to be at maintenance, what that transition takes. That transition is difficult. I always tell people, like, after your diet, you're not done yet. Like, we still got to bring you back. And that's where a coach can actually guide you, because that's exactly where it gets difficult. People feel afraid to eat more because in our head, that's like, okay, I'm going to gain weight. No, you're not going to. Just talk to someone who's been increasing calories. He's been eating 600 calories more than before now, compared to like the end of his cut. Same weight. Pretty much the same exact weight. A couple 100-gram difference, So that's the same, in my opinion. And he was also afraid. So it just takes like that trust in the process and knowing, hey, what I've been trying in terms of dieting, like how much time did I actually spend eating enough? Like, let's get out of that. And the accountability and having someone who knows their shit and knows how to help people with that, like that would be my suggestion. Like getting help. It is difficult. Let's be honest.
Yeah, because again, like getting out of the dieting mindset. Well, what's causing that? In the first place, right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we wanting to constantly diet? But also education around why it's so important to get out of a dieting, like to not be chronically dieting, like as far as like, the effects it has on your health, is extremely important. There was another thing I was going to say. I forgot now. I had something else.
But I mean, the education part, like that's also what coaches should be for, at least help you with.
It kind of, like, the thing is like, you have to push yourself to, or you want to try and push yourself to get out of the comfort zone. Like, increasing your calories is going to be uncomfortable. You know, and starting to remove yourself from that dieting mentality. But once you start seeing the benefits from that, that helps immensely. But it's like, you kind of just have to go through it. Like, you have to go through it. You have to get uncomfortable to reap those benefits and understand why it's so important to, you know, stop chronically dieting. But there's more to it. I mean, again, we need more context of like why, right? So I'm sorry if this didn't help you a lot. It's just, it's really hard to give definitive answers in a situation like this, because there's so many different reasons why it can be happening.
And what I like to do as well, by the way, usually when we answer people's questions, I tell them, I DM them, you're like, yo, your question was addressed this week. If you guys hear your answer and you're like, hey, you know, cool, like I learned something new, but I have a few more questions, like hit us up.
Yeah,
like
totally.
Like that's exactly why I mentioned like, hey, your question is in the episode. Like, let's have a chat about it. You know, like let's maybe try to figure something out. Because there's a lot of ways you can go about it, and that doesn't necessarily mean like, hey, work with us, you know. That might simply mean like, hey, here's something you can do on your own.
Yeah.
Or here's something you want to read about, you know. Let's see, I think we're at the 30-minute mark. Yeah. I'm going to touch on this one really quickly because it's a very easy one and quick one. And then we'll wrap it up. Is that cool? From Ash Costa. Hi, for people who are not willing to track calories and macros, how can they go about being in a calorie deficit to achieve fat loss? Long story short, I'd like to know the reason, because personally, and this is just my opinion, because for sure there's different ways about it, but like tracking is the ultimate way to create results and to learn from stuff. You'll learn about portion control. You'll have something that's measurable. If you want to get to a certain weight or you want to lose fat, you want to be able to control that. It's not even necessarily about the exact number. It's just mostly about like controlling the rate of weight loss, making sure that you stick to it, that you don't rush it, for example. And hey, if it's going too slow, that you can make an adjustment. If you are not tracking, you're basically like, you don't know what's going on.
You don't know where you're at.
You don't know where you're
at.
And
so, sorry, I'm going to interject here for a second.
No, you're good.
So what someone can do is like, you have to understand where you're at from the beginning, period. Like, you need to know how much you're intaking in order to know how much you need to decrease, essentially, right? Yeah. So what I would do is track for 2 days or for 2 weeks, right? Even if it's just like writing your food down. I mean, an app is going to tell you exactly like how much you're eating, and then decrease portion sizes from there. That way you still have like a baseline knowing what you're having again, but then you have to think about if you're under eating, then you're going to drop your calories even further. That can be a problem. But at least like you have a baseline of how much you're eating. Now you can say, okay, like if I'm having 200 grams of rice, okay, I'm going to knock that down to 150, 100 grams, right? And then there you're knocking down like X amount of calories. And you can do that with different foods. Like when I'm, when I have a client and they go into a deficit and I'll give them an example day, right? They're like, oh, so it's really just decreasing the portion sizes of what I'm having now. I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like you don't have to like remove anything necessarily. You're just decreasing the amount of each portion.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to have a starting point. So,
yeah, it's hard to adjust. And I like to compare it to like driving with navigation or driving fucking sitting backwards with a blindfold on and like going downhill and like you don't know where you're going. Like it's like you're shooting in the dark. And you're really just guessing at best.
Yeah.
And I don't think everyone should track all the time. But personally, I think the vast majority of the people should at least go through a period of controlling their food to learn from it, to walk through different phases. That's why we prepare you for a fat loss phase first, get the habits in place, get you ready, get you consistent, then go into a cut so that you know how to do this, control the way out, and then back at maintenance, then say, hey, let's move away from it. Because there, once we're at that goal weight, we can just do without tracking. It's very easy. Yeah. The reality is your mind is going to work against you. Your body's going to work against you. If you're doing it intuitively, you don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. There are some tools that can work. Increasing vegetables, drinking more water, eating more protein, because that's automatically going to help you feel satiated. If walking more, there's a lot you can do. But what I will say is that people, in my opinion, once again, like, try to be open to stuff, right? We're so quick to judge or to decide. Oh, tracking, no, I heard from this person, like, they tried it and they didn't like it. Okay, I'm not going to do it. Mm-hmm. Or I tried it once, like, for like 20 minutes and then, it's like, no, try this out. I want you to track 30 days.
Yeah.
Actively, like, actually weigh stuff, track it, etc. You cannot convince me that you will not learn anything from that. And no, it's not going to lead to eating disorders. It's just going to give you a tool. And we talked about this with Aaron. It's like, are you going to, like, if you have money issues, you're going to try to figure out a way to spend a little bit less to save a little bit more money, right? We need to learn how to control our food. Basically the same way.
Yeah.
Because typically there's a reason, objectively speaking, there's a reason why we want to lose weight in the first place.
Yeah, definitely is going to optimize that process and make it, you'll get from point A to point B easier. Plus, it does give you, in my opinion, more freedom. Yeah. Like, yeah, you could even do protein and calories, but now you're quantifying how much you're having, and you can add in, those fun foods and stuff to keep you sane, during the deficit, and keep things in control still, right? Like that's the beautiful thing about macro tracking. I think people just get the wrong impression of it a lot of the time, and just our mindset around it, right? So, I mean, again, if you really don't want to do it, I would.
You could do like plates and hand portions and stuff, but
I would just get a baseline first. So I would track for like 2 weeks. Like anyone could track for 2 weeks. I mean, come on. Yeah. And then decrease portion sizes from there, right? So just see how much you're eating, right? And then decrease the rice or the potatoes and decrease this, and go from there, right? But again, then you have to do that on the way up. Right.
And it gets difficult because people want a variety, and then there's the weekend,
right?
And then everything changes. Mm-hmm. It's hard to adjust then. Mm-hmm. So, it's tricky.
Yeah. Cool.
Let's wrap it up. Thank you for listening. We'll be back. I think we have a lot more coming up, in terms of questions, where we have more guests coming up. Next one is going to be with Cody McBroom. Very excited for that one. I think that is going to be one of the last episodes of the year. Let me double check. Yeah, I think so, right? Let me see. What do we got? December. Okay, so Cody's episode is going to be the last for the year. So next week, we'll be back. Thank you guys for listening. See you then.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening. If you want to help us grow the show, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or share this episode on your Instagram stories. Now, if at any point you feel like you need more help, you can always reach out to Kristine or myself directly via any of the links in our show notes, because we're here to help. Thanks again, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.